Hello again, ladies and gentlemen. Here we are, week 3. This is couple number 1. Say hello to Kris and Toro. Hey guys, how's it going?
Hi.
We're doing good, thanks.
So, let me first start by asking you a couple of different questions related to West Coast Swing. How did it all start for you individually? Kris, mate, we'll start with you. Where did this dance begin?
So for me, I started swing dancing back in high school. I was involved in theater my junior and my senior year, and my senior year I was in West Side Story, and our choreographer owned a ballroom studio that did a East Coast swing night every Saturday night. So I started doing that and kind of got pretty hooked on it really quickly. Through that, I met some friends who introduced me to West Coast. That it basically had me hooked up. I immediately came back and started looking at the next thing I could do, and was looking at videos of Jordan and Tatiana and Benji Schwimmer and Heidi Grosskreutz, and pretty much in every single piece of spare time I had after that.
And whereabouts are you from, Kris?
I'm born and raised in Kansas City, Kansas.
All right, Toro, love. How about you? Where did West Coast Swing all begin for you?
I actually was salsa dancing before I found West Coast Swing, and a friend of mine who came to the salsa dances convinced me to go and try it, and I hated it, honestly. I did not have a good understanding of what these leads wanted from me, and no one really told me. So I went and I had a bad time, and I left, and a month later, I came back again because I was getting really frustrated with salsa dancing and the community that I was in. And this time around, I met people who were nice and who, explained kind of the mechanics of what they wanted and how it was different from salsa. And this time around, also, they had a different DJ. Apparently, the time that I went, the one time they had this DJ from out of town who just no one liked their music anyway. And so when I came back this second time, we actually had some really awesome music being played, and it was stuff that I like to listen to already. And so I started to like it, and I started to realize I had a bit of a knack for it, even though I didn't know that I did. That was about 5 years ago, a little over 5 years ago now. So about a month after that, I went to my first West Coast event. I failed epically, but I had a good time, and I've been hooked ever since then.
So the music had a huge part in this, hey? Coming from a salsa background where kind of the music's pretty much very similar throughout the whole weekend, but the versatility of the music, is that something that you'd say really did inspire you?
Oh yeah, definitely. But I still do love salsa music. Sometimes people hear me say this and they're like, oh, so you found salsa music boring and now you like West Coast music. And that's not true. I think the complexity of the rhythms in salsa are so interesting and exciting and fun to play with. And for me, listening to West Coast music and trying to find that complexity in the rhythms and trying to put it in my dance and to feel it that way and to relate it back to my origins, I suppose, is really exciting for me. So the versatility definitely drew me to the dance, but also the fact that I don't have to be super sexy every single time I dance. Whereas in salsa, I often would feel like, okay, we're being sexual again, great, whereas in West Coast, you have a wider variety of emotion, in my opinion, which is really awesome.
Whereabouts are you from?
Started dancing in Utah. My family moved there toward the end of my high school education, and I had no choice. So I was there. But I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. That's where I lived most of my life, and it's what I call home.
Why did you guys decide to enter this Global Online Open?
Well, we just freshly started our partnership within the last year. And I've had a little bit of experience with choreography, doing pro-ams and classic and showcase in the past. And this has been Toro's, since we started dancing classic, her first dive into West Coast routines. And since we really started getting more and more into stuff, we thought this would be a fun and really great opportunity to get some choreography as a partnership under our belt. So we took it as a really fun project to be able to see how we choreograph together and just all the stuff we can come up with on our own. And it's just like the perfect opportunity to be a part of this really incredible format and put ourselves out on the world stage and show everybody who we are and what we can do.
Excellent. So it seems to come around at just about the right time for you guys as a couple then, Toro, yes?
Yeah, definitely. It's been really fun. I've never done Kris said choreography in the West Coast world, but I've never done anything like this ever. I never danced as a kid. I mean, you know, jazz tap ballet as a little girl, but I gave up on that pretty quick. So this is my first time doing choreography or, you know, anything like it or performing at all. So our partnership's kind of really new waters for me in a lot of ways. And so this was a nice little like, okay, you know, take a small step forward. You don't have to do it in front of 1,000 people. They'll just all see the video later. And that's a little easier than going out on the US Open floor like we did this year, which is terrifying, but super exciting. Yeah, so it's another way for me to practice and get better at this. And it's super fun so far.
And how have you found the concept of kind of being given the same song, so to speak, and then such a short amount of time to choreograph? I mean, has that process been a little challenging, or how's that kind of worked out for you guys?
I think it's the perfect amount of challenge. You know, it's a short amount of time, but it's not so short that you have to shut down the rest of your entire life to get it done. The music being the same for both couples is really, I think, super exciting, and it's really fun. I mean, half of the time we were just talking about how cool John and Ariel's was going to be because they're awesome. And we were so excited to see what all the other couples came up with and to talk about, you know, how we all have different styles and we all have different strengths, and to just, even so far in the competition, to see people play to their strengths and to do it so well, and, you know, to make it really fun. And it's not, you know, we're not trying to win the US Open. So we all can kind of have a little more fun with it and do things that are maybe a little different. And it's been really cool so far to see that, I guess.
Yeah, it's even been really interesting to see how, not even just the choreography, but even like the music cuts themselves, how each couple is, even though we're getting the exact same song and we're having to cut it to pretty much the same time limit, we all choose to cut our music just a little bit differently. And so it's just been, yeah, super interesting to see how everybody decides to approach this. And, you know, it is a good challenge, especially considering, I mean, we had Chicago Classic last week that we had to prepare our normal classic routine for, and then we had to switch gears once we got back home to Kansas City and choreograph or finish choreographing this one and practice it. And then we had some tricky things with our location videoing that we had to do, that we had to keep rescheduling last minute. And so finally we were able to get it in. That was honestly probably the most stressful time, was trying to figure out when we were going to be able to film this. But when it was all said and done, when we saw the final video and we sent it in, it was a lot of fun, and it was very worth it.
Well, we wish you all the best with it. I mean, it came across great and it looks fantastic out there. So what does West Coast Swing really mean to you, Kris? And how would you describe it to somebody out there who's maybe never tried it before?
So West Coast Swing was really my first dive into partner dancing at all. A lot of people think that I came from ballroom, which I have no real ballroom experience. So yeah, West Coast Swing was really my first partner dancing. And what I've loved about it so much is, for one thing, the amount you're able to put your own flavor into it and really kind of express how you want to move and how you want to execute this dance on top of the rhythmic movement and everything like that. All the different flavors we have in West Coast Swing. It's such a personalized dance that no two of us dance alike, especially when we get up to the upper levels, when we're trying to find that indistinguishable us factor in our dance. And I think it speaks to so much of, you know, a generation that wants to be independent and define who we are as individuals.
Toro, is there anything that you'd like to add to that?
You did mention, what would you tell people who've never done West Coast before? I always have my ready-made response, because you tell them swing dance and they immediately go, oh, you know, like big band music, and then you think Lindy Hop right away. And so I like to tell people that it's a more, you know, it's a iteration of that. And I would like to advise West Coast swing dancers to not forget our origins, to not forget Lindy Hop, and to not forget, you know, shag and all these other dances that are both our contemporaries and our history, and who we owe this dance to in a lot of ways. In the last year, I've had the opportunity to, you know, kind of delve into the history of this dance, and a friend of ours has the US Open winners for the past, 10 years or 20 years or something?
Yeah, from year one to the 25th.
From year one to the 25th reunion of the US Open, we got to sit and watch all those videos, and it's been so much fun to look at the history of the dance and look at how it's affected us now. And to realize how many of my students don't know any of that. And so I'd advise West Coast swing dancers to learn about the history of the dance. And also when people ask you what you do, don't say, no, it's not Lindy. Like, just let them know it's a derivative. That's our ancestor. That's where we came from. And while it's different, there's still a lot of things that relate it back, and we're not all that different in the end. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, that was one excellent answer for sure. So then in closing, where do you see this dance maybe 5-10 years from now?
Oh.
Well, we're so, the perfect people to ask that. I don't know.
Well, in 5-10 years, we plan to be rocking it still. That's
right. We'll be there.
We will be there. I don't know, the West Coast always goes through these, periods where we decide, we find a new style that we want to start to incorporate. Like when, we picked up hustle kind of in the early 2000s, late 90s, Zouk, and more recently, Kizumba, and all this stuff. So, it's always interesting to see how much we like to see other dances and see what we can do to kind of translate that into our dance. Not just full out steal it, but being able to like just adapt elements from it and like the Borg, just absorb it into West Coast swing. So, where exactly it's going to go, I don't know, but I mean, that's part of the fun. That's part of the mystery.
I think that, right now you see a lot of instructors talking about how European dancers and people just outside of the U.S. have a different take on the dance and how they learn it differently, and how, a lot of the music we dance to is English speaking. And so like we actually did this in our musicality workshop. We mentioned how, you go to Russia and you see these dancers and there's so much more rhythmic and there's so much more expressive in these dynamic ways. That's not just pantomiming, because they don't know what the song's saying, or they don't know it well enough to, just do what the song tells you to do with the words, throw my hands up in the air or whatever. They don't care. And they find ways to be more expressive of the song. And I would love to see it, the dance as a whole move that direction, and to see people value more in the music and more in the expression of the music than just what the words are saying, and us finding ways to come together as a international community instead of just, all of us stuck in our little bubble in the US with the sheer amount of events we have. It'd be cool to see, and I'm already seeing it. I have all-star friends who have been traveling a lot more outside of the US, and it's so cool to see that outreach and to see these communities grow so much bigger and develop their own pros that have their own personalities and their own take on the dance. And it's really, I think that's where we'll be going in 5 to 10 years. It's just more and more from such cool places with cool histories and cool cultural resources and stuff that they can share with all of us here.
Unbelievably cool. Ladies and jelly spoons, boys and giggles, give it up for Kris and Toro. Good luck, guys.
Thank you very much. See ya.